What do you think is the most important muscle for jiu-jitsu? Is it biceps?
Oh, I think a strong back. I think back one, core second, and then biceps.
Okay, biceps. Cool. But do you legitimately think like weightlifting helps jiu-jitsu? It's kind of the discussion on the steroids. It's like the muscle mass and strength and power and explosiveness, all of that.
I think sometimes when we're at that upper echelon of competition, there's like little minute battles that you have to win, and if you're relatively close in technique, then a lot of times a stronger opponent pulls it out.
But it could be also just a limitation, right? You hold position too long. What about for hobbyists? Do you recommend weightlifting? Like when you see people in the gym?
I always recommend weightlifting. I almost see muscle as the body's armor, right? The more armor you have, the more damage you can kind of take, and maybe recovery is a little bit better. And I've always seen weightlifting as a means to stick to my routine. Like there's no point in lifting if you're not eating right and you're not sleeping right. So if you kind of put it all together, then it's beneficial.
What about you guys? Do you go to the gym?
I go to the gym, yeah.
Do you go like
Believe
the
it or
hotel
not.
gym to like use an elliptical and that butt machine or
Yeah, I focus on the glutes heavily.
all right. uh what about injury prevention and so on? How do you train to minimize the risk of injury? You guys have all been pretty beat up. You've gotten a major injury with the ACL.
Yeah.
So how do you train to minimize injury?
Probably not the right guy to ask, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, can you talk through your injury? Like what happened?
Yeah, so about 1 week prior to this last ADCC, I was wrestling with this guy named Kenta who was also competing, and I went to go lift him from like a rear body lock, and he hooked the outside of my leg, and we just felt something pop. He felt a shift with his leg, and when it first happened, it hurt for like the first 30 seconds. And then I honestly debated. I was like, maybe it was just, some freak thing. I was like, I literally thought about continuing the session. Then the next day I woke up and it was like super sore. I was, limping around, couldn't do a full squat. So it pretty much killed all of my training for the entire week leading up to the event. So I couldn't train or anything, messed up the cut. Obviously, there's added nerves with that too, when you're not in the gym every day leading up to the competition. I went out there. I wasn't really able to pull guard because I couldn't get, full heel to butt connection, which is inevitable with playing guard. And I was very hesitant to shoot as well. So I came out with the idea of just trying to use hand fighting to tire my first opponent out, and then mainly look to get to underhooks or overhooks and do mostly upper body wrestling. In the beginning of the match, I successfully got to an underhook. I got to a rear body lock. He tried to roll, and I ended up in top position and side control. But it was during the no points period, and then as the match went on, I gassed out, and eventually he ended up taking me down and then scoring with 2 hooks on the back.
So what's the injury?
Yeah, so I got an MRI actually after the event. I didn't know.
You waited. Wait. You waited until after the event
Yeah, I waited until after
because
the
like
event.
knowledge or ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't even want to know what's wrong. I was like, I just go out there, compete. I knew it was like the biggest event to date, and I
Did
really
you
wanted to do it.
think about not doing it?
It definitely was a thought in my head, especially that the day after. It's always the worst day whenever you have like a serious injury. Is the day after, and I was like, man, I really can't do a full squat. I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to be able to do this. It got a bit better over as the week went on, but I was like, man, I have to go out there and compete. I was like, it'll always be in the back of my mind, like, what if I ended up pulling out?
What did you think about this whole?
I thought he was just being a pussy.
Yeah. Just slap him around, just yell at him. Was that the?
I don't think we pressured you. We just say you make your own decision, right? We're just like,
Is that
Yeah.
tricky thing to do, like with a heavily like a serious injury like this?
we don't know.
We didn't
Yeah.
know. That was the thing. We didn't know. Honestly, initially, I thought it was I tore my lateral meniscus, but that ended up not being the case. It ended up being a full ACL tear. I was actually super surprised when I got the MRI results. So yeah, we didn't know how bad it actually was.
What do you think about that situation?
I think Nicky's a tough kid, and I mean, when you're so close to that competition, there's not many. You don't get many opportunities like that to compete in front of 15,000 people. It's like props to you for pushing through it and getting it. And man, he had a close match with one of the best grapplers in his weight class. And it's like a few adjustments here and there, and especially if he was able to train previously leading up to that match, I think Nicky pulls it out.
So some of the things you mentioned is nerves. So there's extra nerves just because you're underprepared.
Yeah, I mean,
feeling underprepared.
You want to go into a competition with the confidence. I did everything that I could leading up to this event. I trained as much as I could, and then when an injury prevents that, you start to doubt yourself more. How
do you guys think about injury? How do you train? Training with the best in the world, training to be the best in the world, and avoiding injury. Because you tore your bicep.
I tore bicep.
Doing curls or.
Dude, honestly, I was bodybuilding, for like 7 years, and no lie, I trained biceps like most days, like almost every day in those 7 years. Pretty much, I injured myself.
That's right? So Jersey, man. That's
anything
great.
else or just the biceps?
No. Yeah, I injured the bicep. Pretty much the day before a wrestling practice, I had like a killer arm day. And by arm day, I just mean training biceps very rigorously, getting a sick pump. And I go to wrestling practice the next day, pretty late. I should have been there. I didn't get a proper warm up in. And the first thing I do is I shake hands and I go to shoot a single leg, and boom, I just blew my arm out the first movement I did. So just not being warmed up properly, in addition to, having a very vigorous arm day a few hours prior.
You hear that about warm up? So like what are some lessons about avoiding injury? And training
I would say number one is warming up properly. Making sure your body's hot before you do hot stuff.
Okay. And what does warm up look like for you? Is it jiu-jitsu or non-jiu-jitsu stuff?
Yeah, just for a warm up in general, I'll do something like if I'm talking competition, something like a jog walk back and forth a few times, then a sprint jog a few times to get that heart rate, up and down.
Yeah.
And then I'll grab a partner. I actually just filmed a DVD or instructional specifically on the pre-match ritual. In addition to that, I'll grab a partner. I'll drill some movements. Typically, I'll drill some bad things. Like I'll start from bottom mount, bottom side control, work out from there. And in pretty much like 20 minutes in, I'm hot and I'm ready to go for rounds.
Well, what about you, Greg? So what's the way to avoid injury? What's the worst injury you've had?
What's the worst injury? I don't even know. I'm pretty good, pretty healthy. Yeah.
Whenever you quit in practice, I'm like, that's a mental injury.
Has your heart ever been broken?
Many times. But there's a thing I notice: people that spend the most time warming up, often the most injured. It's a strong correlation.
All right, you can't argue with science.
I remember
you're right.
Training with Oliver Tuss. Oliver Tuss would have a 60-minute warm up.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise, always injured.
Yeah.
Very common.
Yeah.
I find that very common in the training room. No, I think people, it's how they train. Like if you, like me, first sign of discomfort, backpedal, push through that stuff. Go too hard, go when you're too tired, you know what I mean? Get too emotional in the role. I feel like those are the times that I've been hurt, where I'm just like, I can't let this guy get me. When I have that attitude in training, I believe it's how you train and sort of obviously.
So what does this come from? Like positionally too? Like because you're training against some killers. I mean, you're training with him and going probably pretty hard.
If Craig gets a little tired, he's like, "Yeah, I'm good for today. We go
once a month with Nicky, right? That's it."
And then you quit like 30 seconds in. Just say, okay.
I mean, you got to be safe.
I like it. What about you? What have you learned from the ACL or tear?
Do rehab, yeah.
Yeah, rehab definitely would help.
Oh, so you haven't been like...
I didn't get surgery. I didn't do essentially any rehab. I just have no ACL in my left leg.
So what's it like having no...
The surgeon goes, you've got two options. Surgery, rehab only. Nicky goes, I'll do nothing.
Yeah. Definitely should pick up on the rehab.
What's rehab for that look like? Like twice a day of doing some weird... like bands or something?
It's good he's learned from. He's learned some valuable lessons from about taking care of his body.
Yeah. What's it like just training with no ACL?
So at the beginning, it was definitely a little iffy. I would have an occasional buckle. Like I'd just be wrestling with somebody and go to step back and it'd buckle backwards a bit. But honestly, now, like, I haven't had a single buckle instance in a while. It feels 100% normal when I train. It feels better than my other knee, to be honest. Like, I had I had my meniscus taken out in my right leg, and that one gets sore more often than the no ACL leg.
Okay, all right. So putting that aside, is there is there wisdom you've learned from that experience?
Yeah,
Or no?
definitely should be doing rehab
Yeah.
and prehab. I think that, especially if you're a hobbyist or a professional athlete, you should be lifting. Whether you're rehabbing an injury or just for injury prevention.
So I'm actually closer to Craig because I've trained my whole life, like pretty hard. Obviously, just a hobbyist, but like twice a day, did judo, wrestling, all that. Never broke anything, never injured. Kind of like similar philosophy, except like last year, I guess a year and a half ago, I got a tiny like groin pull injury, and it still hasn't healed. And I've been using your approach of not giving a shit.
Yeah.
And like, all right, surely this is going to heal. It'll be fine. But it hasn't. But of course, if I was like an actual athlete, I would like probably still train through it. Just fuck it, figure it out. But when you have other stuff going on, you just kind of wait it out.
Yeah.
But no, I think probably rehab, especially as you get older, you have to do that kind of stuff.
I think it's important for people to, determine whether what they're going through is an injury or they're just hurt a little bit. Because injury, for sure, take time, rehab it, and get better. But a lot of people, like, they'll stub a toe or something, like, oh, you're out for a few weeks, so.
Well, that's the problem with the injury I have. It feels like a stubbed toe. So I was like, I'll just wait a couple days. It'll be fine. And then like a couple days later, it's not fine. And you wait. And then I never got an MRI, never got any of that. It's like, I'm sure I'll be fine. Yeah. So it's hard to know sometimes, like it's hard to know. I feel like a lot of people will just not check it out. It'll be fine. Well, because there's several failure cases. There is a failure case of where everything is a stub toe. You're like, fuck it. like you're bleeding everywhere. Yeah, it's fine. Whatever. So you have to be careful. A lot of people can fall into that too. I think I'm in that category. Go to the doctor. Why do you go to the doctor?
Yeah.
Your best approach is typically wait until something else gets hurt so that you'll forget about the groin.
Exactly. That's what I was hoping. I was hoping to get hurt. I was waiting for the broken heart, maybe. Okay.